Okay. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of CREview. I'm Josh, this is Dill, and today we are talking about beyond the scroll, why engagement is the only metric that matters. Okay, so today's question that we are answering is, are you really being seen or are you just being scrolled past?
Did this come from one of our comments?
Yeah. After the video about the new shopping on YouTube Shorts, people are
just going wild with questions, and they really wanted us to answer this, right?
so badly. Yeah.
Well, I think it is important, actually.
It is, yeah. Yeah, and especially when it comes to, I mean, this is still, again, along the lines of video and measuring and metrics and which ones matter. And I think this is, I mean, it goes hand in hand with, like, you know, other forms, whether it's like and other things. But
I mean, it's not even content, even. You know, I think content's a big part of it, but just engaging in your brand, and your marketing as a whole. So from digital marketing and social content and your paid campaigns and all of those things, but going through to, are people engaging in your walkthroughs, like in your tours, in when you're scheduling a visit to a site, are people engaging in those visits? You know, so that when we talk about engagement is the only metric that matters, is really true. It's such an important part of all marketing, and that marketing doesn't just need to be digital. Like it's a bunch of things, which we'll dive into.
Yeah, I think some people might be wondering, like, why is engagement the only thing that matters? You know, like, also it's important to get views and all these things. And I think, you know, views are important if you're trying to monetize yourself on Instagram, for example, and you're trying to get paid. But I think,
like us on YouTube,
like us, come on, let's get some revenue somewhere. But I mean, I think a lot of the time people look at things like views and other sorts of metrics, and, you know, they're like, focus on that. You know, like you post a video and you're like, oh, I need to get 10,000 views and all these things. But I think if you're a brand, if you're a company, that doesn't really mean anything. It's just fluff. And
that's kind of part one of this,
which
we're going to go into, like vanity metrics.
Exactly. And I think vanity metrics have been, like, I don't think it's our fault that we thrive on vanity metrics. I think that's like the rise of these platforms. You know, those were the first things that we used to measure our own content, and then businesses try to replicate that. And, you know, look at a company and see how many followers they have and be like, oh, they must be really good because, you know, they've got the makeup vanity metrics that we then look at. But it doesn't mean that they're, from the outside, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're performing well. And also, like, in today's day and age, you can buy followers. You can,
well, I was about to say,
you can buy lists. You can,
plenty of companies have just bought those followers, even buying engagement, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
But you can do it.
You can buy a profile. So I saw one the other day where it was a profile. It was a dormant profile that had 10,000 followers, and it was for sale in the bio. It was like for sale. So you can just, and it was also like, it was like a bikini range. It was like, imagine being a company that does like software or real estate or like a brokerage firm that buys this. You got a bunch of chicks that, like,
I wonder who those followers are.
Yeah.
But, you know, the vanity metrics thing is what a lot of, I would say, sort of uneducated people look at, in terms of, like, uneducated, when I'm not saying uneducated people, educated people, but uneducated from a digital marketing point of view. Because when they come into it, they want to see that you know, people are participating with their brand. And that means, like, if people are following me, that means I now have this really engaged thing on social media that's going to make me money.
Yeah.
You know, and
I think seeing it from the outside, you also look at it as like, oh, it must be important, it must be valuable if a bunch of people are looking at that. I think it is also important to have those metrics.
Good, you know, like it is. It's important, actually. You know, there was a good Netflix documentary on this around influencers and like followings and things like that. And a lot of them would buy their initial like 10,000, 15,000 followers so that if they were seen in explore feeds, etc., people would go and look at their profile and see, oh, they've, like lots of people must enjoy their content because they've got so many followers. And then they would kind of build off of that, which is a huge, like that is its own debate in terms of whether that's right or wrong or good or bad. I don't think we should go into that right now, but from a brand, or if we're looking at commercial real estate specifically, and you look at brokerages and all these different things, if you're a really big brokerage that's well respected, you have a good name. If people go to your pages and they don't see huge numbers, like what are they thinking in their mind? Like, oh, these guys can't be that important. You know what I mean? Whereas it's not about that stuff. So it's an interesting debate to have, because organic, especially in commercial real estate, it's quite difficult to build a very strong organic following.
Yeah,
that's like hundreds of thousands.
Yeah,
it's just the industry wasn't built for social media. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really hard, because I think even when
you're not gonna join Instagram to follow commercial real estate companies.
Yeah, and I think it's built for creators. It's like that creator economy.
It's built for entertainment. Like that's just things of
and
fun,
I think,
really.
Like the commercial real estate industry, if we're talking brokerages, that sort of content, we push for value add content and all those things, but that is a different frame of mind that we targeting on those platforms that are used to that entertainment sort of aspect. And I think it's hard to get that to take off. So I don't think it's something to rely on. I think that's important content to have in the mix of everything else. But, I think a lot of the onus goes to like the internal use of the company's internal structure of like how they communicate. And I think like for us, if we look at Atypical, when we post videos of, say, like you talking something, we all see it in the company and we all like, oh, okay, cool, that's what's happening. And we kind of engage in it. I know that's like internal engagement. It's not necessarily the right thing, but we communicating like internally on social media, and then we then share it and our friends see it. And then that's like that reach snowball sort of goes. Yeah. And I think, for example, a company like SVN or CBRE or whatever, if they started off it's pretty much getting that snowball in its like smallest form, and then you start to let it get bigger and bigger. I think just starting off, just if you start posting videos of talking about like top tips and all these things, and you got 200 followers, and you don't really have that credibility, I think it is going to be. But I think once you've built out that sort of social media rapport with people like in different avenues outside your sort of niche or whatever your company, then you sort of like branch out, and you make friends with the neighbors down the road that are other companies or other brokers, and you do have to. It's about like how many hands you shake, I think, and that's like people in your company, in your if you're global, like spreading out like that, and then also then other companies, and then you're like, oh, even if they are a competitor, we're like touche, we're both in the same game. Both got the sort of mission, but we're just doing it a different way. But we, like, you're keeping your enemies close, and you're like in that sort of bucket, as opposed to like being like ugly duckling. I just said a whole bunch of different shit. I don't know if it makes sense, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of it, because that sort of organic reach and that type of following will generally create real engagement.
And everything I just spoke to now is engagement specific. So that's that communication is all those, the shaking of the hand, that like digital handshake is like an engagement piece, whether it's a comment, a DM.
Well, you think about what you've just said in terms of that snowball effect, like people that in the industry, and it starts to get out that way, and having that very real engagement on your content versus what we started out with is like buying 10,000 followers. No one, like those only, it's so fake that you're not going to get any engagement on content. So that's when we talk about vanity metrics. That's what we mean. It's like you can buy 10,000 followers, or you can have, a real estate page that has got followers that don't engage with you because they're, I don't know, you've obviously attracted the wrong type of audience, or you're talking about the wrong types of things. So that it basically means nothing. But if you've got very engaged people on that follow you, and they're engaging all the time, and they're sharing it to people that they think this might be really important for you to know, or there's a tip on this in this market about this type of investment, and they're sharing it to an investor friend of theirs. Like, it's better to have a small amount of followers, but they're very engaged and they're able to, your message further, than having these like huge numbers. And we're seeing it. So we're going out with our organic social media benchmarks report quite soon, and looking at the numbers there. It's really interesting. So we've tiered the different sizes of followings in commercial real estate. So whether you're a owner operator, brokerage, CRE, we've tiered them based on like more than 1 million followers across all social channels, 750,000 to 1 million, etc., all the way down. And you can see we can see the engagement rates of all of those tiers of companies that have got those types of following. So you'll see like the companies with more than 1 million, their engagement rates are really low. Obviously they've got so many followers that only a very small percentage engage on their content. Whereas the further down you go, the deeper you go in terms of, okay, we've got this brokerage that's got 1,000 followers across LinkedIn and Instagram, but their engagement rate is like 40% of their audience. Do you know what I mean? So it's much more valuable engagement compared to those huge followings. I'm not saying their engagement won't be valuable, but the rates change based on those types of things. And
it's not an equal comparison.
No. So if you're starting out on social media, even as a broker, as a brokerage, a smaller tech company or whatever, and you aren't getting those huge followings, like, don't stress about that. Do you know what I mean? It's more about how much of your audience is engaging with your content, and the right type of audience. So the people that are actually following you, are they the right customer profile?
I was going to say
the right type of person that I want following this page. If they aren't, like, then it's, so even like with our typical stuff, and what you just said does make a lot of sense, but I also I don't want the company engaging on it because it gives me a false idea of our engagement.
Yeah, it's discouraged for a reason.
I kind of don't want people to. I don't want the employees to engage on our stuff because oh wow, we got really nice engagement on this video, and it's 80% is the people that work. It's yeah, but you're not going to become a lead. Do you know what I mean?
No.
You're not ready to on any.
Yeah, my mom sharing it to her Facebook,
and there is the other side of that is that there is value in that because it does help the algorithms and it gains more reach and all those things into the different.
But it's not going to hit the right people that we're targeting.
Yeah, I want to see the right types of people engaging on content, and that's where we kind of go into.
But I want to say, if I was a broker and I shared this thing and that my company, a new listing that my company posted, and I was like, this is such a cool listing. It's I have to share it. I want to share it to my story or whatever, or repost it or whatever on whatever platform. And, I might have my little network of broker buddies and they might be like, oh, sick. I actually know I have the perfect buyer for that.
Yeah.
So there are avenues in that. I think we should talk about why engagement is the only metric that matters. And I think I want to start off by just planting the seed of intent and pretty much why every other metric doesn't really have a strong sense of intent. So the rest are quite soft, and we can maybe unpack that.
Yeah, let's unpack it. I think, for me, engagement it's a sign that someone's ready to act in some way. Do you know what I mean? Especially if it's your ideal customer profile that's engaging on your content, there's a better chance than anything else that they're ready to act. And engagement allows you to see that. Whereas, just reach and impressions, that's very much great, we're getting out there, but if no one's engaging, Like, what's the point?
It's like being at a bar and there's a pretty girl across the way, and you can make eye contact. That might be a view, but there's no step being taken off.
If there's no engagement, nothing's gonna happen.
I might be interested or whatever, but nothing happens there. Or like I walk past her and I brush her shoulder. We've made contact, but not real like hard engagement. Not like, hey, like I am Josh. Like, what is your name?
Yeah.
Like, can I buy you a drink? Sort of thing. Like that, I think, is real engagement. Like you showing intent.
Yeah.
You're asking a question,
and that's what you wanted, and that's what you want from your content. That's what we're trying to get every time we put plans together, and especially organic. We can talk about the paid side as well, but when we think about video, when we think about why we're putting this static image together, why we're putting this carousel together, why we're putting this OM together the way that we're putting it into this format with these images and this write-up, because we want people to engage with it. We want people to fill out that form. We want people to comment. We want people to DM us. So every time we create a piece of content, we should be having that mindset going into that piece of whatever marketing material, whether it's a brochure, whether it's a handout at a conference. What's the engagement that you're trying to get out of that? And it's a nice way of thinking about it when you're creating your content as whoever you are.
Yeah. I mean, back to that analogy, it's the same thing as like those thoughts, that preparation. It's the same as like when you're getting ready to go out to that bar. You make sure that you got your nice shirt on, your hair looks good, and you're putting your best foot forward.
Yeah, because you've got a goal.
Yeah,
like depends what your goal is.
Don't expect those goals while looking your worst. Like you're putting your worst foot forward and hoping that people are still.
That would be counterintuitive to the process, right?
Yeah.
Unless you have like a very unless you're trying to do something very different.
Yeah. They better like me for me. Like.
So a good example I like to think of is, imagine you go out with a post, could be a video, whatever, and it gets 10,000 views, and you're like, amazing, 10,000 views, but you don't get no one comments, no one shares it, no one likes it or whatever. But then you post something else and it gets 1,000 views, but it gets 20 shares, 10 saves, like 3 DMs, whatever. That's sort of the difference between it. Like the 10,000 views looks amazing.
Yeah.
And unless you're an influencer on YouTube or a creator on YouTube or Instagram that is getting paid for like time watched and views, and like that means nothing. It means nothing to your business goals. It's not, it might be doing a little bit from a brand awareness point of view for a bit of brand work, but that's like, don't feel like you've succeeded with that type of post.
It makes me think of like a comedian on a stage that cracks a joke to 10,000 people. Maybe no one, like they're on stage speaking to 10,000 people, it looks good, but then you look at another comedian that has a small little intimate circle of 50 people, cracked a joke and everyone laughed, versus the 10,000 one, no one laughed, but he was still on stage and he looked like legit. Whereas like the little like up and coming guy is actually connecting with his audience, and they're laughing, they're wanting to meet him, and
I mean, how did the first guy get to
True
10,000 people?
I don't know.
What's he doing wrong now?
We should ask him.
But yeah, I mean, that's a good analogy. It's the same thing, right? And it kind of, I guess it takes us into the next part, which is like thinking about how content is served firstly, and then how people engage with content.
Yeah.
So what we play around with a lot what we test a lot is what sort of engagement we get on different platforms and with different types of content. Obviously, like it's something that we're always testing, we're always optimizing, we're always getting insights on. And like looking at something like LinkedIn, which is very much engagement driven, because it doesn't have the shorts scroll sort of video side of things.
Yeah, like the algorithm's not designed to distribute as much as possible.
No, and they want that, right? They want to keep it that way.
It's in a circle.
If you get engagement, that engagement compounds to those people's followers, etc. So it's a different way of getting that compounding reach. So, which is very different to an Instagram or YouTube or TikTok, where you're able to get engagement outside of your follower base. Do you know what I mean? So if you're running video content on Reels and Shorts and TikTok, and you're tagging the right things and you're saying the right things in your videos about the right thing, it's going to get into those circles. Doesn't matter how many followers you have.
Yeah.
You might have 500 followers, but you might get, 50,000 views on a video.
Yeah.
That's coming from people that don't follow you.
LinkedIn versus Instagram, when you're posting a reel, you don't think of your followers in mind. You're hoping for it to go out of there. And yes,
not LinkedIn.
So Instagram, when you post a reel, you're thinking that, you're going to send it out there. And yes, your followers might like it or might see it. But
the more that they engage as well, the more it becomes sort of viral. I hate saying that word.
Yeah.
But getting into similar people's feeds,
Whereas LinkedIn, you thinking of
the people that
your
follow
primary audience, your followers.
You've created that niche ideal customer profile on LinkedIn that you've curated the way, it's the right people. The people that are engaging there are who you want to buy your product or your service or use your brokerage, whatever. So that's what you're creating. You're creating content for them and hoping that they engage with you, whether it's they're, sending you an inbox message, going to your website, commenting, whatever. And hopefully if they're engaging, that a similar type of audience is going to see that they've engaged on this and they might be interested in it as well. And then those people might follow you too.
I think just also when we start to rethink the funnel, and how the media that we're posting shows up to our audiences, just to remember that we're going into a world where we're getting lazier. Our viewers, we as viewers, our viewers viewing our stuff, we're all getting lazier. And I think the way that we have to remember when we're trying to get this engagement is that people are just scanning things. Like that's why video is blowing up, because it's the laziest form of content. You're not sharing blogs to your friends, and we're not all like bouncing around different.
We're not reading newspaper articles.
No, I'm not showing you the newspaper saying like, "Hey, did you see?"
You've got to read this. Yeah.
No, it's like quick 30-second videos.
I like.
We just like boop, boop, boop.
It's quite sad.
The power of the thumb. We're trying to convince the thumb to stop for a second and just like maybe read and then take an action, hopefully. But it's trying to get this bad boy to stop swiping is a hard job, and we got to make it as easy as possible. And that's why when we spoke about the YouTube Shorts being able to click a button, a sticker. It is the laziest thing to do, and it's like thumbs reach. You're like, even when you position that sticker, have it close, have it low for your thumb.
But you're a lefty, you see.
I'm a lefty.
We're gonna go. Most people are probably righties, so you gotta have it on the right.
Yeah, I would.
But that's so. These are all these tiny little things that actually weirdly make it. They do make a difference.
Yeah,
and it's. I don't know. As a brand, as a company on social media now, it's really difficult. And I want people, if anyone watches this and they're listening, give yourself a break. Like, don't be too hard on yourself, because it's so difficult. What did we see the other day on YouTube Shorts? There's 50 billion views a day on YouTube Shorts. You know what I mean? Like, you are not just competing against your industry competitors. You're competing against every single person on social media. Everyone that's posting something, you're competing with them, because your audience, their feed, everyone's feed is unique.
Yeah.
So they might be following 1,000 people. So they're on an explore page that's got content that's related to them. But you're competing against the funny content that's out there, the comedians. You're competing against the animal shit. You're competing
the thirst traps,
everything. You're not just competing against those, the people that are stealing market share from you, yes, those are your competitors.
That's the last of your worries, though.
Man, that scroll is what you're competing against.
Yeah.
There's millions and millions of pieces of content going through all the time.
Yeah.
So give yourself a break. Like, don't be so hard on yourself if you're not seeing the engagement that you expecting, because it's really difficult. There's so much content out there. So it's never been more difficult to get noticed.
Yeah.
And that's when it comes to how we do things.
Yeah. I think also just like consider the fact that like when people look at your content, they don't care. You don't expect them to care.
Yeah.
So that's why you got to think of things like solving a problem. Like, how do you add value to the life in that little moment? Like what can you get them to think about in order to stop that thumb from moving?
You know what I always think about when I stop on something, especially if it's work related. If I stop on something, like, I should probably know that. I should probably read this. Do you know what I mean?
And I would probably save it.
Yeah,
like,
that's it.
I'm not going to read it now.
Save it.
When
Saves are a great indication.
Yeah.
Especially on Instagram. It's a great indication if your content is good.
Yeah. And it's more because saving it for when you in that mindset.
Yes,
to then
because not everyone's going to be in your company's mindset, especially if it's like 10 p.m. They're, lying on the couch watching some trash TV and they're going through content, and you've got a piece that comes up and it's like top market trends in Chicago. They were like, cool, I know I need to probably know about this, but I'm not going to look at it now.
No. I'll do that on company time in the morning.
Like, I'm getting paid for that. So that those are all things to think about. These are all the things that we have to think about. And LinkedIn has got its own sort of times and like best times for engagement, and look at all of those things because they are important, when you're posting organically. But there's different ways that different content helps with different types of engagement as well. But I think it's important that whatever you're posting, I've said this for, I reckon, maybe 10 years now. But whatever you post has to be valuable to your ideal customer profile. It has to offer some sort of value in their lives.
Yeah, I think especially if you're a company, a brand in commercial real estate, I think
because it's harder. If you're in commercial real estate, the rest to stand out.
If it's not, then it looks like fluff. It's a fluff piece, and
what are you offering that's of real value to your audience that they can't get everywhere else?
Yeah,
that's what you want to ask yourself. Like, what expertise do you have that your audience is looking for, that they need, based on, like, if they're an investor, what can you give them that's going to help them invest in something that's going to make them more money than someone else?
Yeah.
Or a better investment than your competitors' investments. You know what I mean? That's the insight that you want to give, because that's going to make them come back. It's going to make them share it. It's going to make them save it. Those are the types of things that make you stand out in this content world. Don't talk about yourself. Do not talk about yourself. No one gives a shit about you. No one cares about your brand.
I was going to say, if you're like, oh, Dill, Josh, how can we post something of value? Like, we want to post something every day. Post less. Don't just spew out things for the sake of it because you feel like you have to in order to be relevant.
See, but there's also the algorithm to think of. That's the other thing.
That algae is doing whatever it wants.
So it's so tricky because, yes, we say everything has to be of value. So if you don't have enough value, don't just post it. But then the algorithm's also like rewarding people for consistently posting a lot all the time because that's what it wants too. But then if you don't get engagement on that content, it devalues that as well. So it's the game of cat and mouse that we play with the algorithm. You've got to find your sweet spot. It's like, I mean, we're talking very much around social organic here, which, that's sort of just where we're at right now. But if you're posting content that is valuable and gets engagement, the algorithm is going to promote you. It's gonna be happy with you, But if you're just talking about yourself and how great your company is and all these things, no one's gonna give a shit. And the only engagement you're gonna get is probably from your employees because they have to.
Yeah.
So, but this is that's from a social point of view. it's the same thing. If you're posting listings on CREview and LoopNet, and we've spoken about this in a separate podcast in terms of the types of things you need to be creating. So stomach, did you hear that?
Yeah, try to.
Sorry, the coffee.
Yeah,
but it's also about like following the rules of the listing platforms and making sure that you're posting the most relevant listings for those people, and your OEMs have got the right information, and it's set out the way that those people want to see it, because that's how you're going to get better engagement than others.
Cool. So we've spoken a lot about engagement metrics, vanity metrics, all these things, very social media focused with this podcast. But one thing to sort of just take away from this and just remember in the back of your mind is that reach is rented, engagement is earned.
Yeah.
And, you can rent, it's all good and well to rent, but, at some point you're going to need to cash out that asset. And I think that asset is engagement that you've earned over time. And it really does bring in rewards. It's almost like delayed gratification. You can go for the instant gratification with the views and the likes or all those things. But the engagement that you really want, like DMs or, people reaching out to you, those sorts of things that tick over and keep, boost your revenue, those are the ones that keep you going for the long run. And yeah, I think that's why it is worth earning engagement.
Yeah, and especially if it's organic or whatever, but give yourself time. You'll see it. It's a weird thing because you won't realize in the beginning that you're doing a good job, but as you keep going, and if you look back to a year ago or 2 years ago, you're going to say like, I was getting like nothing and now I'm getting like X, so these things take time with organic, and it's a long process. But just keep in mind that engagement that's the crucial metric that you want to be looking at. It's not just about followers and those vanity metrics. So when, higher ups or whoever are saying we need more followers, we need more, this and that, just make sure that the metrics that you're tracking are driving towards business goals. And generally that happens, people aren't going to engage with you if they aren't interested. That's just not how the world works. Yeah. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Yeah.
And I think side note, quality of engagement is a whole nother story, but we're not going to go into that. Yeah. I think that's that for this episode. Please like, comment, and share with someone that thinks vanity metrics are the most important ones. And we'll see you in the next episode.